Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Christ Apostolic Church. Pastor Richard Hazlett, Shepherd Richard Hazlett, be teaching on today. We welcome everyone. Those who will be joining in as we start this class, and we certainly welcome each and every one of you. And this is the Shabbat. We pray for Shalom. We say Shabbat Shalom, and the Shalom is peace, and that's what we're seeking for as we conduct ourselves and live our lives. We want to live in peace amongst the brethren, amongst the body of Christ. Everybody that's in the body of the Mashiach. If you are in the body of Mashiach, that's where peace is. Peace and safety, is a place of refuge. It's in his body. He is our covering. He is our water of life we need. He is the bread of life that we need. He is our protector against the adversary, the works of the devil. He gives us everything we need. He's a friend. He's a counselor. He gives us wisdom, knowledge, understanding. He's just a very present help in the time of trouble and in the time of need. We certainly can go to our Messiah, our Savior, our Redeemer. And that which we need from him, he certainly supplies all of our need according to his riches in glory. I'm going to say some things on today. Just kind of follow along with me as we read some scriptures and go through the Word on today. I don't know if we take his word serious. I don't know how sincere we are, if we're really sincere with ourselves. If you're not sincere with yourself, you're certainly not sincere with Mashiach. If you're not looking at, where are you going to spend eternity and take it seriously, if everything just seems to be your own fleshly will, I just want to do the will of my flesh. Whatever the flesh feels like doing, and that's what I'm going to do. I find that my flesh and my heart has been a good companion. And so if I feel like it's the right thing to do, not take into account his word or his spirit. Most of us are led through the flesh. Most of us are led by the flesh. So in Galatians chapter 6, in verse number 8. Well, I'm going to get Galatians 6 and verse 7 first. I'm going to read 7 and 8. Galatians 6, 7, and 8. And it says, "Be not deceived, Elohim is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." The sooner we can understand this law, the better off our life will be and our relationships will be. When we're grounded in truth and we understand his word. Now, you're not going to understand everything in this book. And there's no one person that has all of it. There's not a single person that has this whole book down, that knows it from cover to cover, that has a perfect understanding of all things. We get bits and pieces. We get some here, some there, but he always gives us enough to make it. Those who are alive right now and those who are functioning in the body, he's given you enough to make it. He gives us shepherds after his heart, that is to feed us with knowledge and understanding. And so the sooner that we learn this law and this principle of life, the better off we're going to be. What you sow, you're going to reap a harvest. You're going to reap a harvest off of the things that you sow. Nobody breaks this law. This is a law given from the Shamayim, from our Father up in heaven. It's a law that he has applied on this earth, even when he created it, in the day that he created the earth and he created the land. The principle was already in the ground, the seed in the ground. Whatever you sow, that seed that is sown, you're going to reap. You're going to have a harvest. Something's coming up out of the ground. Something's going to come up out of you that is you, and you can't say and make no excuse. No excuses in that day. He says in verse 8, Galatians 6 and 8, for he that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Many of us don't follow the basic principles and the understanding of this. Many people don't. People play too much. Just people play way too much, and they're playing. They don't realize they're playing with their soul. Outside of sowing to the Spirit, outside of sowing to the Ruach, outside of planting that seed in good ground, you're not going to have everlasting life. People are playing too much. I am not the only person in this bi-state region. This is not the only church in this bi-state region that you can be saved in. I don't want anybody to think, because I don't push that. I'm not building that. I don't build that doctrine here. I don't build that. My teachings and the feeding that I have, you never heard me say this is the only place that you can make it. I don't believe that. You got a lot of folks here ain't gonna make it. Why would I say this is the only place that you can make it when folks here ain't gonna make it? So there's going to be some encouragement in that message that you can make it someplace else. You might not make it here because you got folks here ain't gonna make it. So I don't know if I can make it there. Well, you better go find some place where you can make it. But where you go and who you deal with, there's a principle and a law of life that's in this land, and that is you're going to reap what you sow. I'm glad I'm glad even as some of the teaching that comes out, and it could be heavy at times. But those who believe in the seriousness of this book knows that there is a reward for obedience. Those who follow after the Ruach and the Spirit, and it ministers to them, and they're obedient unto the Spirit, there is a reward for that. It doesn't matter what the name. We look at the name of a building, name of an assembly, a congregation, and we look at the name that's over it. And it doesn't have to do with the name on the building. He's not going to judge you in the day of judgment by the name that's on the building. He's going to judge you by the work that you did or you didn't do. He's either going to judge you by the work you did or the work you didn't do. So the only way we're going to have everlasting life is to sow to the Spirit. That's making spiritual applications in our life. What saith the Spirit? Our Messiah would say, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying. And some of us don't have an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying. I'm going to say, I want to go to Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 16. Proverbs 6:16. And he says, these 6 things doth Yah hate. Yea, 7 are abomination unto him. 6 things that he just outright hates. That 7th one is just total abomination to him. So everybody's got to look at themselves, and when we go through these things that he hates, you have to ask yourself, is that me? Do I identify with that? Because if you do, he hates that. If it's something that he hates, do you think you're going to ride into eternal life and you sowing seeds of things that he hates? You think you're going to get away? You've totally underestimated severely. It's a catastrophe in your life. It's calamity. If you think you can sow the seeds of anything that he hates here and then claim everlasting life. The devil, so that old serpent, I tell you, he's so clever. He deceives people and sits back and laughs at them. He's very good at what he does because he is the master deceiver. He's the father of lies. And even in the Mashiach's day, he says, you are of your father, the devil. Talking about people that were around him. And I had said previously in another Bible class that we built that there was a lot of different people in the land at the time of our Messiah. You had the northern kingdom that was already dispersed. How do you know the northern kingdom was dispersed? Well, it says that in the prophecy and in the Kings, in the book of the Kings, and in the prophecy they had dispersed. We also see it in the book of Acts because there was 3 feasts that it was mandated. Even though they were dispersed, there was 3 feasts that it was mandatory for them to attend. And one of those feasts is what we're coming up to. Actually, this is the 2nd Shabbat. We're counting the Shabbats. You count 7 Shabbats, and then the day after that 7th Shabbat, which would be, it's actually the first day of the week is when it always falls on the first day of the week. And people have built that and made a doctrine out of it that's, that's the day of the Most High, and that's the day of worship. And if you don't worship on that day, you ain't worshiping. That doctrine doesn't come from the disciples that followed Christ, that were the apostles to give the doctrine to not only Yasharah and those who were lost, but in Judea and subsequently to the other nations. The apostles did not build a doctrine on first day worship. They didn't do that. That doctrine of first day worship came out of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's just a fact. And I know I lose a lot of people. People don't like to hear me. I hear that all the time. Facts are facts. And the sooner we, understand facts and start to adjust our lives and to gain in knowledge and understanding, the better off we're going to be. He said that there was a time where he winked at ignorance. We have too much. Do you know the apostles, the prophets, if they lived in our day and seen how much information we have at our fingertips, we can dig up history, we can just search, we got all of this stuff at our fingertips. They didn't have that. They didn't have that. You think he's going to, he's not going to judge us according to the knowledge that has increased when he said it was going to increase? And you can research anything. Any subject you want, you can research it. Go out there and get some writings, look at comparative writings, look at the peer reviews, and get an understanding. So the apostles and the apostles' doctrine, they did not build first day worship. They did come together on the first day. It was the feast of Shavuot or the Pentecost. They did come on that 50th day, which always landed on the first day. And because that's when the Ruach was poured out on that day, then a lot of people build on that constitute that we have first day worship, but you don't find that. You don't find the apostles building that doctrine. They didn't build that doctrine because the apostles, as you read through the book of Acts, even Apostle Shaul, every city he went into the synagogue on the Shabbat. That's just book. And, call yourself whatever you want to call, because a lot of times we put titles on people and stuff. Call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what you call yourself. But you cannot find a doctrine where the apostles built to sanction or to sanctify first day worship. You just ain't going to find it. Well, we've been doing it for thousands of years. Well, he could shut things down for 1,000 years. That's just 2 days to him. It says 1,000 years is as a day, and a day is 1,000 years to him. So if he goes quiet for 1,000 years, that ain't nothing but a day to him, not to us. And you see all these generations that passed, you go, oh my goodness, what about all these generations that passed? Everybody still have to give an account for themselves, and he is a righteous Elohim, and he will judge righteously. So we're counting our Shabbats, we're counting our Sabbath leading up to the Feast of Shavuot. We'll be feasting here at 6 on that 49th day. Actually, it'll be after 6 on that 49th day, because the night precedes the day. So the evening and the morning were one day. So we'll have our Shavuot, our feast. Mark it on your calendars. I think it's May 23rd during the day is the celebration, but we'll be feasting here on the 22nd of May at 6 o'clock, probably after 6 because that's when the night starts, and so that's when we'll have our feast. So when you look at Proverbs 6 and 16, in verse number 17, the first thing that he hates is a proud look. Right off the bat. Right off the bat, he hates a proud look. Anybody that thinks more of themselves than what they ought to think. I think that was in Galatians, the 6th chapter. I want to go back to Galatians 6 because I thought I read that where a man is not to think. Verse 3, Galatians 6 and 3, he says, for if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. Now, some people say, well, I know I'm something. No, you listen to what the writer is saying here. What he's saying is really we're nothing. All of us, even Brother Shaul. I mean, it's like Shaul didn't try to beat his own horn. In fact, in 1 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, he says, after all that I've done, I myself would be a castaway. He had to live with that in his spirit until the last couple years of his life, and he wrote that letter to Timothy, and he told Timotheus, he says, I've fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. So at the time of his death, he was assured that, okay, I made it. I made it. But it wasn't until it was close to his death that he realized, because on his journeys, as he was doing his journeys, and Shaul had a fallout with Barnabas. They had a fallout. It was so sharp that Barnabas didn't, I'm not going to ride with Shaul no more. And Shaul said, I'm taking Silas. And so you had Shaul and Silas, and Barnabas went his way as an apostle. So when Shaul was going through his journeys and his missionary journey, he says, after all that I've done, I might even be a castaway. So listen to what the writer's saying here. Says, for if a man think himself to be something, now in the eyes of our Father in heaven, really, all of us really are, especially if you're disobedient, you're expendable. Did I say, is that a word? In his eyes. He even told Moses, move out of the way. I'm going to light them all up. They all going to die right here. I'm done with them. So if he looked at the people that he had chosen, and in the 5th chapter of Exodus, he said, I am the Elohim of the Hebrews. I'm their Elohim. I'm going to be your Elohim. You tell Pharaoh that I'm the Elohim of the Hebrews. And even in that 5th chapter, and Moshe went to tell Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, who is Yah? I don't know who Yah is. I don't know no Yah. Who you talking about? Well, he found out who he was. In short order, he found out, and he perished. So he found out in a great way. So when he says when he is nothing, you have to look at that flesh and look at yourself, and really we're nothing compared to him. We really are nothing. We're just his creation. He gives the illustration. I think it's Peter that does it. He says he quotes the prophet, because he says we are just like the blade of grass. All man is just grass. His flesh is as grass, and it just withereth and vanishes away. That's just what we are. So I can't think myself to be more than that, because when you think of yourself being more than that, the one that you're deceiving is yourself. You're not deceiving him. And a lot of people that you run with, you ain't deceiving them either. Because most folks know you ain't doing nothing. Well, you talk a lot, but you ain't doing nothing. I think Steve Wonder said that, didn't he? He said, you haven't done nothing. So a proud look is something that he hates. And if it's something that he hates, then how you gonna justify yourself in that day? And you're just so proud. Some of us are just so proud of, we're just so proud of our name. I'm so proud of my family name. You got a lot of folks, I mean, the former president, and they're just so proud of the name. Then you got other people that is in the history of this country where if you was a Rockefeller or a Hunt or some of these other, families that had these names that they're so wealthy, and people get caught up in that pride. And then it comes into the church. It comes into the assembly, into the body. And you got folks that are just so puffed up with pride and arrogance. That's something that he hates. He hates a lying tongue. Somebody who can't stop lying. And the ones that they deceive is themselves. Everybody knows lying is something he hates. In fact, the 9th commandment says, thou shalt not bear false witness. That's a knife. And he talks about that further on in one of the 6 things he hates. The difference between a lying tongue and a false witness, as we get down here to a false witness, a lying tongue, somebody just utter lies. They just speak a lie for no reason a lot of times. There's no advantage. You absolutely have no advantage, and you still lie. I mean, that's something that he hates, a lying tongue. This other one where it says a false witness that speaketh lies, whenever you're called as a witness to witness something, and I've been building on how this book needs to be understood, and that you cannot understand it nor build a doctrine without 2 or 3 witnesses. You have to have 2 or 3 witnesses to build a doctrine, and any doctrine you have, you need to have precepts, and it's the prophets that spoke the precepts. Isaiah is a precept. And then he says line upon line. So in that precept of Isaiah, you have lines here and there. So you grab a line here, grab a line there. You got precept upon precept. So the prophets should be witnesses to each other. And we find that that is true. You've got Jeremiah the prophet, you got Ezekiel the prophet, you got Isaiah the prophet, Zechariah the prophet, Joel. I mean, it goes from one prophet to another, and you can use each one of them as a witness to build a doctrine. One thing you cannot do is take one verse, one line. You cannot take one line and build a doctrine. And that's where a lot of people have gotten into error. So a false witness that speaketh lies, a false witness is when you, another example we have is what Christ said when he said that if you are at the altar and you have an ought with your brother, you leave the altar and you go to your brother and you try to gain your brother. If that doesn't work, you take 2 or 3 witnesses that every word could be established. So somebody who bears a false witness is when you actually witness something and you're called to give a witness to that. It could be something that happens in the body, and it could be your best friend. It could be your best friend, and you're called to be a witness, but you want to save face with your friend. I want to save face with my friend. This is my boy. This is my girl. I got to save face with them. You have some people that will lie for you. I heard somebody say years ago, I heard this dude say, um, he said, it was kind of, it's not really funny, I guess. I kind of chuckled at it. But he said, I'd rather lie for you than lie to you. I had to stop and think about that for a minute. You know, because it's like, I ain't going to lie to you, but I will lie for you. Oh, you know, that kind of loyalty you have with people, even in the body. You got some people in the body, they'll lie for other people. And that type of witness, he hates that. He hates that. I try to make it a practice here of having more than one witness, even when it's you know, when you're counseling or you're talking to people of certain subject matters. It's good to have 2 or 3 witnesses so that every word could be established. Because a lot of times, when it's one-on-one, a lot of things can be said one-on-one, and then when you call in witnesses, then that one-on-one conversation, all of a sudden, no, I didn't say that. Oh, yeah, you did say, no, I didn't say that. Wait a minute, you told me right to my face. No, I didn't say that, because there's other witnesses there. So it's always good to have 2 or 3 witnesses so that every word can be established. And he hates somebody that does just what I said. You can deal with them one-on-one, and then when you bring in witnesses, and then they lie, bear false witness. So the difference between a lying tongue and a false witness, if you ever been called upon, and it might be your best friend, BFF, I think that's what they call it. I might be out of date. I don't know what they call it anymore. So much stuff flying around. It could be your best friend. It could be the one that you ride and die with. And you're called to witness something that they said or something that they did, and you lie. He hates that. He hates a false witness. So, but then he says, hands that shed innocent blood. Verse 17, hands that shed innocent blood. You have people that look to hurt and harm people. That's their motive of operandi. That's a tool that they use. They actually use certain things, certain tools that they have to inflict pain and to hurt people, to shed innocent blood. Now, did they bleed out and did they die? I mean, even if they didn't bleed out, that blood is still on your hands. There's things that you can do in the body of Christ, in the body of the Mashiach, that is very detrimental to a person, because a lot of times we like to cut people up. And you have to be careful of what you say and who you say it to. You have to be careful. And some people just run off. They don't even stop to think about what they're saying. They just run it off, and then they realize what they said, and then they realize the damage that they have caused, and then they start to repent. Well, by then it's too late. You've done too much damage already. There's a lot of blood in the water. People who have hands, so their work, what they're trying to do, and the tools that they have is to shed innocent blood. You have those in the body. I keep saying them in the body, but they're probably not in the body. But the book deals with them. But you have people who prey on the weak. They prey on them. They prey on those that are innocent. When you know that person is innocent, well, I want to make them as guilty as me. Let me smear them. I'm going to say this. You have to be careful who your friends are. You got to really be careful who you say your friend is. Um, I don't want a friend that's a friend today and gone tomorrow. I don't want a friend like that. You might just go and leave. Don't. You're not my friend if you like me today, but you hate me next week. That ain't no friend. That ain't no friend. Um, let's go to Proverbs 17 and 17. This is a friend. A friend loveth at all times. I think the problem with a lot of us is we don't understand, we don't have the definition of a friend. We don't understand what a friend is. That's what it is. Because you've never been my friend if you don't like me now. If you hate me now, I don't like him, I hate him. You ain't never been my friend. The Bible gives us a definition of a friend. A friend loveth at all times, through every storm, every setback, every heartache. They lied on me. You ain't my friend no more. You lied on me. I never was your friend. If you're saying that I'm not a friend of you because I lied, you ain't never was my friend. Get out of here with that. You don't understand what a friend is. A friend loves at all times, and you don't have many of those. In life, you might have 3 to 5. You got them on your hand. You might not, if you got 5 friends explained by the Bible, if you got 5 of them, that's a lot. That's a lot. Because you got some folks, they only ride with you when the times are good. They ride with you for what you got. They ride with you for when times are good. And then when times get bad, and all of a sudden you stop spending money on them, or all of a sudden, life-changing event happens, and sometimes folks get jealous of other folks. But if you're a friend, you're going to love them anyway. A friend doesn't stop loving. And that's why we can call our Messiah, our Mashiach, a friend. Because it says, I think it's John 13:1. Is that what it says? He loved them until the end. Because a friend loves at all times. And in another place, it says he laid down his life, or what is it? No greater love than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friend. Why? Because a friend loves at all times. Yes.
I think that we're in this area, or should I say in this world, and we want friends so bad that we see someone, they're nice, they look nice, they might be well off or whatever the case is, and we're like, oh, that's my friend, and quickly take them on as a friend. But Sirach 6, 7 through 8 says, thou wouldn't get a friend, prove him first, if he not hate you to credit him. It's a process. It isn't an overnight thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you build it. That's something that you have to build over time. It takes time. And the most valued relationships are the ones that took time to get there. A lot of the pressures of life and the changes of life and losses and gains in life, a lot of that actually builds to make that friendship stronger. If you ain't never been through nothing, that's why, people talking about that was my friend. It's not your friend no more. No, that ain't my friend. They lied on me. Well, they never was your friend. Let's get it straight. The person was never your friend. Quit lying. Tell the truth. I don't want to be associated and be around people that love you today and hate you tomorrow. If that's how you're going to be, leave. Get up. Like I said, I've never said in my teachings, I've never said that this is the only assembly, the only place you can be to make it. I've never said that. You have a choice to make. Folks going to lose out at the end. They're going to try to blame the preacher. No, you got to, it said save yourself from this untoward generation. People want to blame everybody else. I'm blaming you. I'm blaming family. I'm blaming friends. I'm blaming your family. I'm blaming this. I'm blaming the deacons. I'm blaming. Look in the mirror. Blame yourself. If you lose out, if you miss eternal life, blame yourself. If you don't get up in that first resurrection, blame yourself. Because you got some folks that's going to be here when it's time to leave, and you got some that the resurrection is going to happen, and we're going to see folks that didn't get up in the resurrection. And if they didn't get up in the resurrection, their fate is sealed. Fate is sealed. And you got folks talking, they want to blame other folks. No, don't blame me. Don't blame me for your loss. I'll help you find some place to go. I will. Where you want, let me help you. I ain't going to lie to the preacher, though. I ain't going to lie to the preacher and tell you, oh, you getting a good one. Yeah, that was the MVP. Oh man, I feel so sad. I'm hurting inside because they leaving. I ain't saying that. Because I ain't going to lie. They tell me, well, what about their character? What about that? What about this? What about that? I'm going to tell them. I'll give examples. No, don't put it on me. A friend loves at all times. A brother is born for adversity. So we're going to have adversities in our life. We're going to have adversities. And that's why you have a brother. Because a brother is supposed to be there. When things are so bad, things are so adverse, you should have a brother there that's going to stick with you. And if he does stick with you, that is a true friend. That is a true friend. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Proverbs 18:24. Let's go there. Proverbs 18:24. A man have friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. So a friend, this is one of those friends that loves you at all times. You got a brother for adversity, but if a friend could be, a true friend could be even closer than your brother that's there for you in adversity. Because a true friend is going to love you. They see your imperfections. And they don't. I'm not going to, that's the one that where it says their hands, through their hands they have the shedding of blood. That was in Proverbs 6. Because they're always trying to find something to use against you to carve you up and cut you up. Always. I'm a Proverbs. Hands that shed innocent blood. Because you got some folks, and I'm telling you, be careful who you call a friend. Give it some time. And don't tell somebody your whole life and you don't even trust them. How am I going to open up and tell you things in my heart? I don't even trust you. How am I going to tell you some of the things that I've done wrong and you ain't even been around here long enough? Our friendships ain't weathered no storms yet. We ain't been down no foxholes together. But you want me to open up and tell you my life story. Not me. Not me. We have to be careful who we talk to, because you can tell folks about yourself and you think that they're your friend, and you find out that they ain't your friend, and everything you told them, now it's all out. That ain't no friend. That's not a friend, according to this book. Now, you might write a book, and in your book, that could be a friend, but not according to this book. Not according to this book. Friends are always there. A friend will be there to protect you. A friend will be there to help you. You wounded, a friend will be there to help you. Instead of trying to find some salt. See, you wounded and you bleeding, they trying to find some salt to pour in the wound. And last week they was your friend. Who's zooming who? That ain't your friend. You don't have too many friends. You don't have too many friends. A heart, verse 18, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. This is something that he hates. So if he hates it, what do you think he's going to do in judgment? Well, we got an example of this in the 6th chapter of Genesis. Because in the 6th chapter of Genesis, he said, my spirit would not always strive with man. He says, they're only wicked continually. Their heart was just wicked continually. He says, that's it, I'm done. So what was the judgment on the world or on the land when their heart devised wicked continually? Well, he destroyed them. Yeah, death was a judgment. He wiped them all out. All but 8 souls. Wiped out every tribe on the earth. Everybody's on the earth. Wiped them all out but 8. And from those 8 souls, we got, 7 billion people today? So do you think he still hates wicked imaginations? Oh, yeah. And you got some folks that just lie on their bed. You got some folks that just, they'll communicate. Here's the thing. This ain't nothing but the devil. This ain't nothing but the devil. So you don't want to be with this person. Person A don't want to be with person B because of person C. As long as person B and C is together, person A don't want to have nothing to do with either one of them. And then something happens between person B and person C, and person C goes with person A and person C is against person B. That ain't nothing but the devil. That ain't nothing but the devil. That's all it is. Call it what it is. That spirit is of the devil. Person A didn't want to have nothing to do with person B or C at all. I don't have nothing to do with none of them. Neither one of them. I hate all of them. All hate. Just I don't have nothing to do with none of them. And then person A and person C gets together. Now person A, person C ain't got no love, ain't got nothing for person B. And you want to call yourself, I'm worried about my soul. You ought to be. You ought to be. You ought to be really concerned about your soul. Because that there is something that he hates. I hate that. So how do you think he's going to judge you? When you practicing something that he hates, how do you think he's going to judge you? You ought to be scared. Don't come crying to me. Better find somebody you can go and cry to and tell them about all the evil you done. Feet that be swift and run into mischief. One thing I want to say is the sooner we teach our offspring, our generations, the sooner we teach them the principles of this book, the better off they'll be. You have some people, they don't want to teach their kids nothing, send them off to church. Send them off somewhere to teach. No, you should be teaching them in home. The principles of this book. Well, I don't even know the principle of the book. Well, you better go and learn. Paul even had a problem with one of the assemblies and told all the women to shut up. Go ask your husband at home. That's what he said. Now, that wasn't a principle for all the assemblies, but for that particular one, he told the women to keep silent. You ask your husband at home. Because some folks just talk too much. Folk run their mouth too much. Paul was dealing with adults. Now you got children talking adult business, running their mouth. Where's the mama? Where's the daddy? We got some folks today, we got some young folks today, you can't tell them nothing. Disobedient. And we read the other in the Bible class we built on Wednesday that he's got cursed children. We read that, 2 Peter 2nd chapter. He said these are cursed children. You mean they're his children and they cursed? Yeah. They curse. He knows their end. He knows it. Parents, grandparents, we need to be teaching our kids not to be swift to run to mischief. Don't be swift to run to mischief. And let me say this loud and clear, because we've got some young people that want to get together and fight. Not here. Yeah. Not here. Not here. Parents and grandparents, if your kids are coming here and they want to start a fight, stay home. Stay home. You ain't coming up in here fighting, wonder, I want to fight this one. Stay home. Don't come up in here. And then you got others, and they just I want to see a fight. I want to go. Let me go. Let me fight. Let me go. And then you got people picking sides. I'm telling all of y'all, stay home. Don't come out here. No. Stay home. We have people who are supposed to be adults, encouraging. We're going to get to that last one here. But if you know that there's going to be trouble and you got kids that want to fight and you're not trying to prevent it, what, you an adult and these are children and you know it's wrong, but you don't try to prevent it. You just, I'm going down with them. You got adults. Yeah, you're at the age of accountability. They'll put your name and your picture out there because you're over 18. So they'll put your name and your picture out there. Oh, this is adult. They'll say man, and you want to be a man? Oh, this is an adult male. Adult man. They'll put your name and your picture out there. And all it is foolishness. It's just foolishness. So parents and grandparents, talk to your children, and if they want to come and fight somebody here, stay home. Stay home. I'm not having it here. I'll change the locks on the doors. None of y'all can come up in here. The only way you can come up in here if I'm at the door and I let you in. Otherwise, you can't come up in here. I'm not putting up with it. This stuff should never have started, but now that it's started and it's rolling, just keep rolling past here. Just keep on going. And don't use this name as a place that you attend. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm done. I'm done. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. Who's trying to put a stop to it? Didn't the Mashiach say, blessed are the peacemakers? I'm just trying to get peace. I'm just trying to tell y'all shouldn't be doing this. No, we going to go over there. No, you ain't. If you're going over there to fight, no, we ain't going. But you got people who have feet that are swift to run into mischief. He hates it. He hates it. So how do you think he's going to judge you if he hates? We dealt with a false witness that speaketh lies. That's 6 things. Notice now, proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift running to mischief, a false witness speaking lies is 6. He says 6 things I hate. Then he says 7, an abomination unto him. So that 7th one is something that he hates more than all of them. Abomination is extreme hatred. I mean, it's something that, he hates a proud look, but what he hates more is somebody sowing discord amongst the brethren. He hates a lying tongue, but something he hates more is somebody that soweth discord. He hates hands that shed innocent blood, wicked imagination, feet that runneth to mischief. He hates that, but what he hates more is somebody that sows discord among the brethren. So somebody that comes in with the intent to separate certain people from other people, that's discord. That's disunity. Accord means one. Accord means one. That means we're all one. That's accord. Discord means, well, I got a fraction here. I got a fraction here. I got this clique over here. I got this family over here. And all of that is discord. And it's something that he hates extremely. He extremely hates it. So if it's in your heart to hurt somebody, if it's in your heart to rally people in your corner against other people in the church, that's discord. It's discord. And I'm shutting down everything right now. I'm shutting down everything. I'm going to meet with the auxiliary leaders on tomorrow in the executive boardroom. But I'm shutting everything down right now. And we're going to shut it all down and we're going to rebuild. After we shut everything down, some people ain't going to be here. And that's all right with me. I've lost enough sleep. I want to have a peaceful sleep at night. So shut it down and we're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild. So you ain't over nothing. I'm over everything right now. If there's a auxiliary or any kind of function in the church, I'm over it. Well, who's the leader of this? Me. Who's the leader over the women's? Me. Who's the leader over the usher? Me. Who's over the brother? Me. Who's over the young people? Me. Who's over Christian education? Me. I'm over it. It's time to get discord out of here. Either we're going to be one and go forward as one, or you got to go. Got to go. Adios. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem. So if you got something to say, stand in front of your mirror and have at it. Stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself all about it. I'm done with the discord. I'm done with it. There's people who are hurt, and there's going to be more people hurt. So I'm just done. I'm done. How do you think you're going to be judged when you sow in discord? How do you think you're going to be judged? I don't think you're going to be judged too nicely. So I made a lot of people mad. There's folks that are mad and upset. Well, okay. But if you want to be here, in this assembly, in this gathering, if you want to be here and be a part of this ministry, then we're all going to be on the same page, or take your page and go somewhere else. And we're going to see, or at least I'm going to see, who wants to stay and who's not. Because it's all right with me. If you walk out and say you don't want to be a part of it no more, that's all right with me. I'll say, yay and amen. That's what I'm going to say. Hallelujah. Ain't shedding a tear. I'm going to say hallelujah. All praises to the Most High. Because if you think he's going to put up with all this stuff, you don't know him. You don't know him. Just read the script. Read the script. Think he's going to put up with all this. He ain't putting up with this. Take your drama and go somewhere else. All right? So I had to say that for the first hour. That's right. So Proverbs 6:23 says, for the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and the reproofs of instruction, that's the way of life. If you're being reproved, that's just the way of life. That's what you have to go through. If you weren't wrong, if you didn't do anything wrong, you ain't being reproved. There was a saying my first pastor used to say, I ain't talking about you unless it's you. If it ain't you, I ain't talking about you. Hey, I'm not even in none of that. I don't know what he's saying. I ain't in none. Well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about those that's in that mess. And your boots ain't big enough. The reproofs of instruction are the way of life. So he says that those I love, I chastise. He says that in Hebrews. The ones that I love, I chastise. Because he ain't going to, and I'm glad. I mean, has anybody been chastised by him in your walk with him? I know I have. I've been chastised. And it's because he loves me. He says, if I don't chastise you, you're not my son. Yeah, you're a bastard. You're not my son if I don't chastise you. So, but this book the whole book is a commandment. From cover to cover, we're dealing with commandments. We're dealing with instructions, and I know a lot of people want to run from the law and don't understand the writings of Paul, because a lot of people think that brother Paul just destroyed the law and put it away. If he did do that, he would be in error. He would be in error if he did that. I want to go to Philippians chapter 3 and verse number 5. And this is something he talks about. He talks about if anybody should have confidence in the flesh. I mean, if we're putting anything like he said in Galatians, for somebody who think him to be something when he is nothing, who's he deceiving? He's deceiving his own self. So he's saying, now if somebody's going to glory in the flesh, look at me. I think I could glory in the flesh. And he goes on to explain he was circumcised the 8th day of the stock of Yasharal. He's telling you where he came from. Now, all of the other apostles that Jesus had chosen, he chosen 12, they were out of Judea, and the ones that were in Judea was the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And you had some Levites that were there. The Levites were in Judea, but you also had some Levites that were around where the other tribes were, because when they went into the synagogue on the Shabbat, it was a Levite that had to do the teaching. It was a Levite that sat in Moses' seat to do the teaching. But what Christ did was he chose 12 men out of Judea from the tribe of Judah. Even the one that betrayed him, his name was Judas. We say Judas because we have the Greek influence, and the Greek language, they would put what is that, stigma, is that what that's called? They would put that at the end of a masculine name, a male name. They would put that at the end of a male name to show its masculinity. I think that's what it's called, a stigma. Is that that letter that they put at the end of a male's name? Because you see it, especially in the writings of the Gospels, even Judas, and it has an S on it. His name wasn't Judas. His name was Judah. He was, huh? Oh, his Hebrew name. His Hebrew name was Judah. But the Greek language has such a great influence on the writings of I don't like to use terms like Old Testament, New Testament, because it's letters and the good news that was written with the Torah. That's what was written with the Torah. But the Greek had such an influence on it that when it was translated from the Greek and the Latin into English, we kept a lot of that influence. So even though his name was Judah, we say Judas. But Judas is the Greek rendering of Judah, along with some other names. Even look at how they say Isaiah, Isaias, because they put that S at the end of the name. Elias, talking about Elijah, and they put the S on, and some other names. You'll see it in the writings, in the book, in the Torah. You see other names because it has such a Greek influence over it. But his name was Judah, and all of the men that he chose were out of Judea or out of Judah. That's where he chose them. Now, Shaul says, I was one born out of due season. So he's telling you here, he says, I'm of the stock of Yasharal. Now, all the other men that he chose, he didn't choose men from the other tribes. Why didn't he choose men from the other tribes? And it kind of goes with the prophecy I'll come back here, but in Genesis 49 and verse number 10, it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So the people, all the other tribes and other people were going to be gathered unto who? Huh? All the other tribes and all the other, who were they going to be gathered unto? Huh? They're going to be gathered unto, okay, let's look at it again. Genesis 49 and 10, what does he say? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So where are all the other tribes and all the other people? Where are they going to be gathered unto? They're coming into the house of Judah. They're coming into Judah. Judah is where the other tribes are going to come into. Because out of the two kingdoms that he had when the kingdom was split, the scepter wasn't going to depart from Judah. Even though the other tribes, there was a northern kingdom, he didn't give the scepter to the northern kingdom, nor the lawgiver. He didn't give it to the northern kingdom. It was still the southern kingdom. So out of Judah is where, that's why our Messiah says in John 4:22, that's why he says here, ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Yahudim, or the Jews. Salvation is of the Yahudim. So what he's saying is salvation is of Judah, because that's the prophecy, that the scepter would not depart from Judah, nor lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the. So he's going to gather them all together. Let's look at Matthew 23 and verse number 37. He says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Because everybody's got to come back to Judah, and Jerusalem is in Judah, and the new Jerusalem that is coming, it's still going to be in Judah. Everything is going to come back into Judah, because Judah is the one that the scepter was going to stay with, the lawgiver was going to stay with, and all the gathering of the people are going to be gathered unto Judah. And that's why he says, I want to gather all your children together. And he says in John 4:22, ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, because we know where salvation is. The Messiah. The Messiah didn't say that salvation was with the northern kingdom. It's not with Reuben, the Reubenites and the Gadites and the Simeon and Issachar and Naphtali and all of it. It wasn't Issachar. Did I say Issachar? And Dan, the Danites, and Ephraim. Now, Ephraim was the name over the northern kingdom. In prophecy, when it's dealing with Ephraim, because it talks about that in Hosea, the prophet Hosea, it talks about Ephraim. And I think Ezekiel too, it talks about Ephraim and how you had the children of Ephraim and the children of Judah. He even talks about the two sticks in Ezekiel 37. Talks about the two sticks and how the children. Ephraim is the northern kingdom. Joseph, when they refer to Joseph, that's the northern kingdom. Israel, when he talks about Israel, he's dealing with the north. Well, I got to be careful when I say that, because he's bringing them all together, but they have to come unto Judah, because that's where our Messiah came from. It is evident that our Messiah came out of Judah. It says that in Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews. It's evident that he came out of Judah. because he had to fulfill that prophecy. So all of his apostles that he called, all 12 of them were out of Judea. They were out of Judah, because that's how the people are going to be gathered back in. Even when we say we are of the apostles' doctrine, what we're saying is they're bringing us into Judah. That's where we're going. We're going back into Judah, because that's the doctrine of the apostle. It's just that what has changed between the time he came here to earth and his death and resurrection, what change has been brought in. And the change was the Levitical priesthood had ended, because Christ now is our high priest. We have a high priest. Christ is our high priest. And so you can't have two high priests. The high priest had to come from Aaron or Kohath. If you could not trace your lineage back to Kohath, you could not be a high priest. You could be a Levite. You could work in the temple as a Levite and as a priest, but you can't be a high priest. We only have one high priest now. So all these other religions and everything talking about a priest and everything, it's so obvious. People ought to call it out all the time. These people are not priests. You are not a priest of the Most High. You're not. Because you got all these folks talking about they're a priest. And you're not a priest. We have one high priest. There ain't no more. He says when he comes, he closes it all up. I'm the high priest now. And the order that he's after is Melchizedek. He's after that order. He was the Most High Elohim's priest, and he was a king. And that office that Melchizedek had no beginning nor no end. And so now we have our Mashiach that is after the order of Melchizedek or Melchizedek, and that order is he has no beginning, he has no end, and he's both king and priest. That's the order he's in. So everything else is shut down. Anybody call themselves a priest has an antichrist spirit, because you're against the Mashiach. We only have, where is that at? Let's go to Hebrews 3 and verse 1. Hebrews 3 and 1. Now, the book of Hebrews was written to people who were supposed to have known the law. I mean, it was written to Hebrews. You had a book that was written to Romans. This book was written to the Hebrews. And he even upbraided them. He said, when y'all ought to be teachers, y'all should have known this thing. Now, I got to teach you again the first principles of the oracles, when you actually should be teachers. It was the Hebrews that were supposed to go out and teach. The 12 men that he chose were from Judea or from Judah. We'll get back to Paul. Paul lets you know, I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. But where was Benjamin? In Judea. Yeah, Benjamin, because you had that southern kingdom, which was made up of Judah, Benjamin, and some Levite. Paul says, I was born out of due season. I come out of Benjamin. But he came out of that southern kingdom, because unto them all the tribes, all the brethren, everybody's supposed to be brought back into a relationship with him through Judah. Unto him the gathering of the people will be. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle. So you mean our Mashiach was an apostle? Yeah, because in order to be an apostle, you had to be sent. And that's why he handpicked these men and sent them out. He did not handpick Eusebius, who changed his name to Jerome, and sent him out. And Jerome is credited for the Latin Vulgate. He took the Greek Septuagint and the Greek, they said the Greek letters, and he translated it into Latin, Eusebius. His name is Eusebius. And I got a book by Eusebius up in my library. And he's an educated man. he's an educated man. And there's some things that he said that I had to really stop and really look at it. So yeah, okay. And what Eusebius was saying was he gave the breakdown of Christ's genealogy. He broke it down. And so I looked at how he broke it down, and I said, man, he did a good job, because he talked about the genealogy from Joseph, and then the genealogy from Mary, and how that led back. I mean, he did a deep study on it. I got that book upstairs. But it talks, and it's by Eusebius. He's the author of the Latin Vulgate. But Christ, the Mashiach, was our apostle because he was sent. So who sent our Mashiach? His Father did. His Father sent him. So he was the first apostle because he was the first one sent. Then he sends out apostles. So, and I know you got people today, they call themselves apostles and everything. So what they're saying is Christ sent them. That's what they're saying. That because in order to be an apostle, you have to be sent. Another one is, in order to be an apostle, you have had to have seen him. And so Paul, after Paul's conversion, which was after his resurrection, I mean, Paul's conversion was years after the Pentecost. When Paul had his conversion in the 9th chapter, they had gone through. We read through Acts and we think things happen, boom, 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 just like this. Oh, I read through Acts today, so the way we read through it, it's like everything happened all at once. No, there was time that, because they said Paul's death was right around 66, 68 AD is when Paul probably died, somewhere around there, because he died before the destruction of Jerusalem. And we see when he wrote Romans, he was actually he had somebody else write it, but he was the one speaking. And he was actually in the last 2 years of his life. So you got the time of the resurrection, about 33, and then you got the time of Shaul's death, which was about 66 or 68 AD. I mean, you're talking about 3 decades. I mean, so when you read the book of Acts from the feast of Shavuot or Pentecost, from that time to the time when we read in the 28th chapter when Paul was in house arrest and he's getting ready to see Caesar, and that's where he died, you're talking about 3 decades. So from the time of Pentecost in the 2nd chapter of Acts to the time of the 28th chapter of Acts, you're talking about 3 decades or 30-some years span in that time. But we read it and we think, oh man, we just read it and we think, boom, 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 things happen just like that. But you got to consider the time element in there. So Christ sent out all these apostles, but he was the chief apostle and it says here, high priest of our profession. So once he fills this role of high priest, there is no other priest coming. There is no other priest. And there's a religion out there that they have their priests. And the alarms ought to automatically go off. I don't want to do nothing that those people do, because they talk about priests and Christ is the high priest. He's the last priest. Nobody else is coming after him. So how do you know nobody else is coming after him? Because he fills the order of Melchizedek. And that order of Melchizedek is there's no beginning and there's no end. So if there's no end to that order, and our Mashiach is in that order of the high priest after the order, where is that's in Hebrews 7? It says he's our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. I think it's in Hebrews 7. And 17. I'm just kind of reading down to there. I want to start at verse 14. We'll read down to 17. For it is evident that our Adon sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moshe spake nothing concerning priesthood. So when you look at the tribe of Judah, there's no priesthood in Judah. because the priesthood comes out of the Levitical tribe. So you had the Levites that were the priests, and they were the priests for Israel and the Most High because they needed an intermediator. And so you had the tribe of Levi. He said, give me the tribe of Levi. And he split Joseph in two. And so you still had the 12 tribes of Israel, but Levite was his tribe. That was the priesthood. And it is yet far more evident that after the similitude of Melchizedek, there ariseth another priest who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment, but after the power of an endless life. So the order that he is in and the power that he has, when you look at not after the law of a carnal commandment, when you look at Melchizedek and the office that he held, there was no carnal commandment on that office that Melchizedek had. Yes.
Hebrews 5 and 10 says a priest forever, and then it talks about Christ being the priest forever.
Is that in 5 too?
Hebrews 5, 5 through 10. It talks basically, it says, so also Christ did not glorify himself to become a high priest, but it was he who said to him, you are my son, today I have begotten you. As he also says in another place, you are my priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek, who in the days of his flesh, and when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him, who was able to save him from death, and he heard because of his godly fear. Through he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered, and having been perfect or perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him, called by God as a priest or as a high priest, according to the order of Melchizedek, of whom we have much to say and hard to explain, since you have become
Dull of hearing. Yeah, yeah. And they were Hebrews. They should have known,
right,
because that was part of the commonwealth of Israel, the commonwealth of Yasharal. I mean, they should have known. They should have known what they had. So he was a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So there's no other priest. If it's the powers of an endless life, there's no other priest. Unless you're coming up under him. And that's why Peter says in 1 Peter 2 and 9, it says we are a royal priesthood because we're coming up under him. Not that we are priests, but we're in that priesthood of being intermediaries. Actually, being in that priesthood, we are intermediators for the rest of the world. But it's only through Christ's priesthood that we have that priesthood. So really, all of Yasharal now is a priesthood, because it used to be just the Levitical tribe. But now all of Yasharal, everybody who comes in under Christ is in that brotherhood, in that priesthood. But he is the high priest, because you could only have one high priest at a time. When you study the Levitical teachings, you could only have one high priest at a time. You had to wait till the death of the high priest for another one to come, and they had to prove that their lineage went back to Kohath. Now, you got a lot of people call themselves Israel today, and they have no proof going back to the 12 tribes of Israel. They have no proof, let alone, Levi, the tribe of Levi going back to Kohath. There's absolutely no proof that they can prove. Now, what could be proof of who you are is, where is that? He talks about a sign. This is the sign that's upon you in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. I'm trying to find that where it says, this sign shall be upon thee. There it is. Yeah, I got it highlighted right here. Okay. And in Deuteronomy 28, and this is verse 46, but it talks about all of these curses. And even in verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahuwah thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So that seed, we know what that seed is. That means generations. I mean, that's your seed is the next generation, and then their seed is the next generation. So it's from generation to generation. So that is the sign that is upon Yasharal. Notice now, he says forever. So going all the way back to when they came out of Egypt, this is Deuteronomy. This is before they even went into the land of Canaan. This is before Joshua took over. Moses is giving his last, he's given his last speech unto Israel. He's telling them, you got to choose this day. He says here, I set in the 30th chapter, I set before you life and good or good and evil, life and death. He says, I'm setting that before you. He knew which they were going to choose. He knew it because he tells it here in the 28th chapter here. He says, this is going to be a sign and a wonder upon you and your seed forever. So if you are a nation of people, but you don't identify with any of the curses, then you're not Israel. You're not Israel. Either you're right and the Holy Scripture's wrong, or the Holy Scripture right and you're wrong. Well, I'm going to take the latter. I think the Holy Scriptures are right and everybody else wrong. Like he said in Isaiah, he says, I declare things that are right. I declare things are right. And it's impossible for him to lie. So if somebody says, no, we don't identify with those curses, but yet we're Israel, well, then you're lying. That's just the outright lie. It's just outright lie. So, I mean, let's face it. I think the problem a lot of times is people can't, look at truth and handle truth. And a reason for a lot of that is because when you've been lied to all your life, and then when somebody tells you something different than what you heard all your life, then all of a sudden you look at that as, I can't identify with that. I can't identify with that. I mean, I've been told this all my life. I talked to a gentleman, and I was telling him that, that's political Israel. They're not the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's over there in the land. And he says, what he told me after we got done, because he listened to me, and then he said, I can't accept that right now. He said that was just too much for him. He said, I can't accept that because then I have to change everything I believe. So he had a problem with it. Yeah, he had a. Now this was somebody in what we call the church. He was a minister, and it was like that means I have to rethink everything. I have to, my faith, everything has to. If they're not the people, then a lot of things has to change. He said, I'm not ready for that. I'm just not ready for it. He just rather stay in what he knew, what he's been taught all his life, that those are the chosen people. But if you believe they're the chosen people, then you might as well just take eschatology out of your mouth. Come on, get it out. Eschatology. You can't speak on, no minister can speak on eschatology if they have the political Israel as the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. because that throws you off on prophecy. From Isaiah to Malachi, it just throws you off on all the prophecy. Yeah. Yeah. Some of it could be. I mean, it could be money. It could be money, but the you can never underestimate how deceptive the devil is, our adversary. You can't underestimate his ability and the power that he has to deceive, because he has deceived nations. And when you talk about nations being deceived, you're talking about people in political power, people who have armies, and people who have economies, and people who have resources. And so when you're dealing with nations, you're dealing with all of that. And he's deceived nations. So if he's got nations deceived, at least what we can do as the body of the Mashiach, the least that we can do is stop telling that lie. You might not believe, everything in it, but don't tell that lie. Just don't say, I don't know, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know those aren't the people. We just have to see how things play out. But don't keep reiterating that lie, because that's what it is. And study history. I'm doing a study, and I'll come out with more of it. But like I said, I want to be able to talk on it with the spirit of knowledge, and studying some things that even predates Christ, because he says all that come before me are nothing but thieves and robbers. So if I'm actually beholden on things that came before him, and you're beholden on that, and you're believing in that, all of that has to be disassembled. I mean, it has to be disassembled, and we have to look at our Messiah as the as where we begin. And we have to be careful with that, because a lot of people confuse the writings of Brother Shaul. That's where I was. Where was I? Philippians. I'm talking and running in Philippians 3 and 5, because a lot of people misrepresent Shaul. They don't speak of Shaul with knowledge of Torah. They only speak of Shaul through the lens of the interpreters of the Greek and the Latin. They speak of Shaul through that lens, and they don't speak of him through the lens of how he looked at himself. Circumcised the 8th day, of the stock of Yasharal, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as touching the law of Pharisee. And when he's dealing with as touching the law as a Pharisee, he was probably going to sit on the Sanhedrin. If he wasn't on the Sanhedrin, he was going to sit on the Sanhedrin. Now, some scholars say he was actually on the Sanhedrin. He was one of the 69 or 70 on the Sanhedrin. Others said he was going to, because the only reason why you would sit at the feet of Gamaliel is because you was going to ascend to it's like preparing for the Supreme Court. You got all these judges and stuff, and they're practicing their profession of being a judge, and a good judge, building up their record, because they want that appointment to sit on the Supreme Court. And so he sat at the feet of Gamaliel with the purpose and the intent to be on the Sanhedrin. If he was not on it, he was going to be on it. So as touching the law, he was a Pharisee. And as touching the law, being a Pharisee, that means he was going to be a teacher of the law, just like Nicodemus. Nicodemus was on the Sanhedrin. He was a lawyer. He was a lawyer. He was a part of that council. So as touching the law of Pharisee, He knew the law forward and backwards, back. He could talk to all of us about the law and run circles around us, and we wouldn't even know what he'd be saying half the time. Because that's how much knowledge he. That's why when people read Romans, some people get tripped up, especially in the 7th chapter of Romans. They're just, oh man, wait a minute, Paul, where are you? You over here? I mean, they can't figure it out because he was such a student of the law. He could speak the law. Even with the Galatians and dealing with adult male circumcision with Galatian, and he compares circumcision to uncircumcision, and people don't really follow what Paul's saying, because this book talks about the circumcision as being Yasharah and the uncircumcision as being Gentile nations and heathen nations. So you had the circumcision and you had the uncircumcision. And Paul deals with circumcision and uncircumcision, and what he's trying to do is bring them together, because he's saying whether you're circumcised or uncircumcised, he says we are by faith of Christ, speaking about Israel and other nations. But a lot of people read Galatians and they just want to throw all the Torah away. I'm going to throw all the Torah away, because even with the allegory, you have to get some understanding of the allegory that Shaul was talking about and compare that with circumcision and uncircumcision, and bring that into the faith that he was trying to bring people into, the faith of Christ. So if I'm trying to bring you into the faith of Christ, am I going to destroy the Torah? If I'm going to bring you into the faith of Christ, how am I going to? He says, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me. So if I'm trying to bring you into the faith of Christ, why would I do away with Torah? And you can't. Shaul didn't do away with Torah. He taught from the Torah. He taught the kingdom from the Torah. We got that testimony in the 28th chapter of Acts. He taught day and night. He talked to them about the kingdom and about the Mashiach from Moses' books and the prophets. It's right there in Acts 28, verse 23. It's right there. So there's no way he didn't do away with Torah. He used the Torah, Moses' writing, and the prophets. He used that to teach the kingdom. And we pray that the kingdom comes. We are preparing ourselves now for the kingdom. And some of us are going to be teachers in the kingdom, and some of us are not going to be. But if you are going to be a teacher in the kingdom, how are you going to teach people the faith of the Mashiach and into the kingdom, and that's in the future, if you don't even believe in Torah? It don't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to, everything, like he says in Romans 15 and 4, everything that's written aforetime was written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So I read that and I study that so that I can teach the kingdom that's coming. We're praying, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in the Shamayim. So if I'm praying that prayer, I'm praying that his kingdom is going to come. He's going to set up his kingdom here on earth. At his ascension, his disciple says, are you at this time going to return the kingdom back to Israel? He said, it's not for you to know the day nor the time. Just be witnesses unto me. I want you to go into all the world and be witnesses unto me, because when his kingdom comes, we got to have people that knows how to teach the kingdom. And you're going to be teaching the kingdom from Moses' writing, the volume of the book. That's how you're going to teach the kingdom. You're going to teach the kingdom from the volume of the book. So Philippians 3 and 6, concerning zeal, persecuting the church. So he had a lot of zeal, and he showed his zeal by persecuting the church. Touching the righteousness. Where do I find righteousness? He says, touching the righteousness which is in the law. So I can go to Torah and find righteousness. I can find righteousness in the Torah. He says, as far as touching the righteousness which is in the law, I'm blameless. You cannot spot anything on my life that was against the righteousness that's in the law. Can't do it. So that's his life. That's his life. But what he shares with us is that even though that's who I am and I have all of this, I can put all this trust and confidence in the flesh, he says all of that means nothing if I don't have Christ. If I don't have the Mashiach, everything that I am, you mean you're of the nation Israel? Yes. But if you don't have Christ, it don't mean anything. You mean you're of the stock of Benjamin? You mean as a Pharisee, you know the law, as the righteousness that's in the law, you're blameless. He says, out of all of that, if I don't have Christ, if I don't have the Mashiach, all of that amounts to nothing. In fact, he says is it here in this stretch? He says he counts it as dung. Is that in here? Yeah, but somewhere he says he counts it as. Where's it at? Oh, there it is. Yeah, verse 8. Yea, doubtless, and I count all things lost for the excellency of the knowledge of the Mashiach, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and do count them dung, that I may win Mashiach. So after all that he had, his magnificent pedigree and the knowledge that he had, he says that doesn't amount to anything if I don't have the Mashiach. If I don't have him, if I don't have Christ, none of that means anything. So how are you going to make it without the Mashiach? How are you going to make it without Christ? None of us. We can't make it without him. We have to have him. And if I'm brought into the faith of Christ, and because it even says it in verse number 9, and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ. The righteousness which is of Elohim by faith. So from the side that he's on, because everybody doesn't have that pedigree that Paul has. Everybody can't say they're of the stock of Benjamin, out of the nation of Israel, circumcised the eighth day. They, touching the law, blameless. They can't say, a lot of people can't say that. But through the faith of Christ and the faith in Christ, and being the faith of Christ, I can have the same reward that somebody else has that has all of that rich pedigree. You have those who are not of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, and like Paul, but if they have the faith of Christ, they can be counted worthy and be a part of the commonwealth. Okay, in Ephesians chapter 2, and let's look at verse number 11. Ephesians 2 and 11. Wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called what? Uncircumcision. So again, you have the uncircumcision and the circumcision. So there's times where Paul deals with, even in Galatians, he deals with uncircumcision and circumcision, and he talks about we have to have the faith of Christ, because uncircumcision, you're dealing with Yasharal. Circumcision, uncircumcision, you're dealing with the Gentiles. Circumcision, you're dealing with Yasharal. And he makes that distinction. Uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time ye were without Christ, or the Mashiach. You were without Christ. And if you're without Christ, if you are uncircumcision and you're without Christ, what are you called? An alien. So if we want to talk about aliens, that's an alien. Somebody who is without the Mashiach. Somebody who is outside of what he's getting ready to explain here, the commonwealth. If you're outside of that and you're without Christ, you are an alien. He says, being aliens from the commonwealth of Yasharal, Israel. They were not a part of the commonwealth. Now, when you look at what Paul had, Paul would say he's of the commonwealth of Israel. Look at his pedigree. And he was blameless when it comes to the righteousness of the law, and that's where eternal life is. He was blameless. So he was in the commonwealth. Now, what does that commonwealth give you? Well, it's going to give you an inheritance, because he promised Abraham an inheritance that his seed will be able to inherit. There's an inheritance unto the seed of Abraham. I'm going to come back here. Remind me, come back here. Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in the Mashiach, Christ Jesus. And if ye be Christ, if you're Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So there is an inheritance coming unto those who are of Abraham's seed, because Abraham's seed stands to inherit. And not only are they going to inherit the portion of land that they have on this present earth, but there's a new earth and the city called heaven that's going to come down on the new earth, and that's going to be the inheritance unto Abraham's seed and his promise. Okay, so back to Ephesians 2 and 12, and that at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise. You had no hope, and you were without the Elohim in the world. So that's where they were. They were aliens from the commonwealth. They were strangers to the covenant. The covenants, notice now there's more than one covenant. Covenants of promise. They had no hope, and they were without Elohim in the world. So what happened? But now in Christ Jesus, ye who sometimes were afar off are made nigh by the blood of Christ. So through the blood of Christ, aliens, strangers, no hope, and no Elohim, now be through the blood of Christ, now they have a hope. Now they're covenant, they are fellow citizens to the covenants of promise, and now they're part of the commonwealth. Because of Christ, because of the Mashiach. So he's bringing in uncircumcised or heathens or Gentiles. He's bringing them into the inheritance that he's going to give to Abraham. Because you have some that are of Abraham's seed, you have some that are of Abraham's seed that's not going to inherit. That's sad to say, but they're not going to inherit it. Because I can't see, maybe somebody can show me in the book, I can't see where somebody can be against the Son of the Most High and not claim the Most High Son, but then get the promises of Abraham and the covenants of Abraham. So you have some people that's going to try to get the covenants of Abraham and the commonwealth of Abraham and the inheritance of Abraham, but they want to do it without the Mashiach, without Christ. So somebody has to show me that in the book, how you can get the inheritance through Abraham, Abraham's heritage without the Mashiach, without Christ. Now, people up to Christ who were faithful and kept the righteousness that's in the law, everybody up to Christ. And why do you say righteousness that's in the law? because you had some people that were in the northern kingdom that was dispersed. They did not keep the letter of the law. They could not keep it to the letter of the law if they were out of the temple and out of Israel, because the letter of the law, the only place you were to offer up sacrifices was where? At the temple. You couldn't offer up, if you offered up sacrifices anywhere else. That's what got Israel, when the kingdom split with Rehoboam and Jeroboam and Rehoboam. When the kingdom split, Jeroboam says, we're going to offer up sacrifices here. Yeah, I mean, so that was illegal, because the only place you're supposed to do it is in Jerusalem. So they would always have to travel to Jerusalem. So you had people who was living outside of Jerusalem, and some only came to Jerusalem at the time of the feast. So there was no offerings, there was no sacrifice for sin, there was nothing. You didn't do nothing. If you did it, you did it illegal. So you had those who, even though they lived it to the best, the righteousness that's in the law leading up to Christ's death. At his death, that was the sacrifice now. That's the last sacrifice. No more sacrifices, no more blood being spilled. There's no more sacrifice for sin. Christ's sacrifice was the last one. So after that now, so how does somebody, after Christ's resurrection and ascension, how do they get the inheritance of Abraham without Christ? You can't. You can't, because Christ is the one. Even everything in the Torah, everything in the Torah points towards Christ. It all points towards him. And then you have the letters and even Revelation that points back to Christ. And Revelation is a book that is very difficult to explain with a clear understanding, because of the way the Spirit writes it. It takes, you need to know history if you want to have a deeper understanding of Revelation. And then not only history, but then you have to understand Hebrew idioms and have a good understanding of the Hebrew language and culture in order to be able to interpret. Because you have the example of Daniel. Remember Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar had that dream. Nebuchadnezzar was focused on that image, but it was Daniel that had to break it down and explain it. So a lot of people, when they get to Revelations, they're stuck on the image and not how it is to be broken down and whose nation, who's this, and because Daniel explained to him. He says, "You're the head of gold. That's you. You're the first kingdom." The head of gold, the golden king, that's you. He says, "There's one coming after you, which is the Medes and Persians. Then you had the Greeks, and then you had the Romans. Those are the four beasts. There's not another beast coming, because that last beast was wounded, but that wound was healed. That beast is alive today. It has a lot of influence on our script, on our word. It has a lot of influence on our the way we worship. Believe it or not, they have a lot of influence on the way that we worship. They wrote some things and started their religion before Christ. That the Roman Catholic Church, now it's called the Roman Catholic Church, and we're looking at it, this way, but the foundation of that, the footings and the foundation of that was 200 some years before Christ, because you had the pontiff. Pontiff. And the pontiff was like a college where their priests would go to. You mean they had priests predating Christ? Yeah. They had their, it's called collegium, but it was their college of priests that they would go to, and it was called the pontiff, and they had their religious belief before the Messiah came. So and then you had going from the pontiff, which was the religious that started off first, and then you had the Roman Empire, because it was like the pontiff started, the roots of the pontiff and where it came from was right around the time where the Greek Empire started to fade, because you had Alexander, and what happened after Alexander? The Greek kingdom was split in four. He gave it to his four generals. And so you had the fading away of the Greek Empire and the coming on of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, the first emperor of the Roman Empire was Julius Caesar, who predates Christ. And he was called the Pontifex Maximus, which means it's the Pontifex Maximus is almost like what we call Melchizedek. What was so unique about Melchizedek? Also, because people, but Melchizedek is king. But what was so unique about Melchizedek? Melchizedek. Right. So he was the king and the high priest. And so that order of Melchizedek is the king and high priest of the Most High Yah. Well, the Pontifex Maximus, that's their version of the king or the ruler or the emperor and the religion or the priesthood. So Julius Caesar, who was the first Pontifex Maximus, was what you would call king and priest. Because he could write, he was over the pontiff, which was the college of priests. He was over that, so he could write religious law. Plus, he was the emperor over Rome. Now, Christ said, everybody came before me, they ain't nothing but thieves and a robber. And a lot of people think the Catholic Church came after Christ, but their origins was before Christ. Their origins was before Christ. So we really have to be careful, especially when they have certain garb. I don't even wear those. I don't wear that garb. All that clergy collar, that comes from the pontiff. It's a clergy collar. It comes from the pontiff. That Dagon hat, that fish hat, all that stuff that they do, and all of that comes from their religious order. It has nothing to do with our Messiah. Nothing. Yes. Roman was the empire. Catholic means universal. So their kingdom was their emperor. I mean, they said that was the last world empire or whatever, because it's in the four beasts. But it's still present today, because what happened with Rome, if you follow the history of Rome, did it just stay in that little peninsula, Italy there? No, it spread. It spread. In fact, it got broken up. It got broken up into different nations over there in Europe. It got broken up. So it's still, that's when it says it was wounded, but the wound was healed, because it's still in power today. It's more powerful than what we think. The devil is very deceptive, and he deceives, and he lives in either half truths or all lies. That's his habitation. So he could be in half a truth, and that's a whole lie. And he can deceive with half a truth. He can deceive. Because even in our book and the Old Jerusalem Bible tells you when he gave the commission to his disciples after he left, he told them to teach nations and to baptize them in his name. He told them that. He says, you baptize them in my name. And you teach all these nations what I commanded you to teach. You teach them that. But when you look at Matthew 28, 19 and 20, you look at it through the lens of the translation, then when they translated, they didn't say, baptize them in my name. They said, baptize them in the name of the Father, name of the Son, name of the Holy Ghost, because the Roman Catholic Church was in polytheism, but that predated Christ. In fact, polytheism goes all the way back to Nimrod. It goes back to Nimrod. So polytheism is nothing new. It's predated, and that's why Jesus said, everybody that came before me, they ain't nothing but thieves and robbers. All of them. So we have to look, our focus is on him forward. But you can't focus on him without the volume of the book. You need the volume of the book because that's his testimony, and that you take that and you go forward with it. We was going to have questions today. People still have questions? Do you have some questions? We was going to have questions today. I was going to open this up for questions. Now, here's another thing that some people get mixed up, where it says in Ephesians 2:14, for he is our peace, our shalom, who hath made both one. So what is he talking about there when it says he's made both one? He's talking about uncircumcision and the circumcision. He said he's made both of them one and broken down the middle wall of partition between the circumcision and the uncircumcision. And when people look at that, they think he's broken down and destroyed the law. And that's not what he's talking about there. He's not talking about that there. The middle wall of partition was not Torah. The middle wall of partition was that you had the commonwealth of Israel, you had the promises of the covenants. He told them in Exodus 5. He says, I'm the Elohim of the Hebrews. I'm your Elohim, nobody else's. And that's why he said in here, the uncircumcision had no hope in verse 12, and without Elohim in the world, because the Elohim belonged to the Hebrews. He said that. He said, I'm the Elohim of the Hebrews. You tell Pharaoh that I'm the Elohim of the Hebrews. So everybody else didn't have them. So that wall that was between, what he talks about between us, that wall of partition, that wall was the fact that you had uncircumcisions on this side, circumcisions on this side. And the only way that you could be in the covenant or the promises of Abraham is you had to be with the circumcision. In fact, you had the uncircumcision and the circumcision, and they wouldn't even mix. They said, we ain't got nothing to do with you. We're not going to break bread with you. You can't come into our synagogue. Nothing, because it's unlawful for us to have anything to do with you. So what did he do? With his flesh, he broke that down, having abolished in his flesh the enmity. That enmity. Now, the law of commandments in ordinances, the law that was given to who? Okay, who was it given to? Who was the law given to? Israel. Israel only. That's who it was given to. So Psalms 147 and verse number 19. Psalms 147 verse 19. he showeth his word or Torah unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Yasharal. He hath not dealt so with any nation, no other nation. And as for his judgment, they have not known them. So no other nation knew the judgments of Elohim or the Most High Yah. No other nations knew those judgments because it was not given to no other nation. It had only been given to Israel. So when you look at Ephesians, where we were, Ephesians 2 and 14, what he abolished in his flesh, the enmity, the law of commandments and ordinances, what he did was, when it wasn't given to nobody else but Israel, and uncircumcisions, they weren't a part of it. So what he did was, with his flesh, he abolished it or took that away, so that now everybody's included in it now. You can be uncircumcised or part of the uncircumcision, and you can be included in there. Not that he did away with it, about having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the law of commandments and ordinances. Listen to what he says. For to make in himself of twain one new man. To make in him, instead of having two, uncircumcision and circumcision, instead of having two, I'm going to bring them together as one. Not destroying the law and the commandments and the ordinances, like some people say, oh, that was destroyed. No, that was given to Israel. And the uncircumcision was left out. So what he did in his flesh was he took away that enmity or that difference between the uncircumcision and the circumcision. Because the circumcision had the law and the ordinances, the uncircumcision didn't have it. So what he did was, with his flesh, when he died, he broke that. And instead of having two, uncircumcision and circumcision, he says, I'm going to make one. And that's going to be one new man. So making peace. And that he might reconcile both. Listen. And that he might reconcile both. Who? The uncircumcision and the circumcision. Because I'm going to make one new man. He might reconcile both unto Elohim in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, because it was given to. Do you know people don't like Israel because Elohim is their Elohim, and he gave them the statutes, the commandment. He gave them the inheritance of Abraham. I mean, they were a favored people. They were. And so that brought enmity with other nations. Why are you going to fight for them? Why are you fighting for Israel? They just as much in idolatry as we are. Why are you fighting for them? Why are you their Elohim? There was a lot of friction and a lot of fight between them. And the reason why, and he never gave up on Yasharal, he never gave up on Israel. And the reason why is he's not a covenant breaker. He don't break covenant. Now, he's opened it up to bring others into this covenant, but he's not going to break covenant. He's not going to do it. He's not a covenant breaker. So what was the enmity and the jealousy between other nations and Yasharal? Through Christ, he's saying, hey, y'all could come up into the commonwealth now. You could be part of the commonwealth. I'm opening it up to you, but you got to come through my son. It has to be done through my son. You're not going to get up in here without... I don't know if I'll say this. I'll say this, and just let's use some wisdom with it, because we have to know. It's just good to know this, and when you know that, and that he might reconcile both unto Elohim in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby. He's opened it up to the uncircumcision. But when you look at the life of Christ, Christ came unto his own. He did. He came to Israel. He came to redeem Israel. Now, why was he just focused on Israel? Why did he send them out, go to the lost sheep of Israel? Why is it just Israel? The salvation is of the Jews. Why is all that? Because he didn't make covenant with other nations. The law and the ordinances was given unto Yasharal. And they broke it and they were lost. So he went to redeem them. But upon redeeming Israel, like he says here, I'm destroying that enmity between uncircumcision and circumcision. I'm bring both of them in and make one man, one man, to where it's for the circumcision and uncircumcision. But when he first came, he had to redeem Israel. Israel was given the first shot at adoption. It was given unto Israel first. Because he even says that in Romans 1 and 16. When Shaul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of the Mashiach, for it is the power of Elohim unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Yahudim first, to Israel first, because he went unto his own first. But we know what it says in St. John chapter 1, where it says he went unto his own, and his what? His own received him not. He said, I'm coming unto you. I'm coming to redeem you, and you don't even receive me? But then he goes on and says, as many as do receive him, he gave them power to become what? The sons. Yes. Is that better, Zeke? Testing. Okay, here we go. I hope I can answer it. I don't know. I don't know. At least it'll have me studying. Oh, being the least in the kingdom? Yeah. I um I don't know what the least in the kingdom is. I really don't know what the least would be. I think when you look at a kingdom and what Israel had, look in their history and the kings and what they represented, you had different hierarchy in the kingdom. You had those who had more responsibility and had, more accountability. And then you had those who were, paupers. You have some that were poor and didn't have a lot, and then you had those who really had a lot to. You look at Abraham, and Abraham had he had servants, he had livestock, he had silver, he had gold. He was a very wealthy man. And then you had some that weren't so wealthy. So in the kingdom, you've got those who have a lot of responsibilities. Then you have those who don't have much responsibility. You have some who are notable and renowned, and then you have some who aren't. He gave the example of the talent, and the one that had 5 talents made 5 more, so that was 10. The one that had 2 made 2 more, and that was 4. The one who didn't do nothing with his, but who did he give that one to? The one that had the most. Yeah, to the greatest. So you have those who have there is going to be hierarchy in the kingdom. There is going to be hierarchy. And so you'll have those who have the more, and then you'll have some who don't have much at all. Yeah, so I mean, you're going to have that in the kingdom. Now, it says that we will be kings and priests. Now, the priest is the one that does, well, even the king was supposed to do some teaching, but the priest is the one that does a lot of the teaching. So you might have somebody that can't, if he gives the example, if you teach them to break the least one of these commandments, you're going to be least in the kingdom, which means you can't teach nothing. You might make it in, but you can't teach nothing because you taught them to break the commandments. Well, according to what Jesus said, he says if you teach them to break the least of these commandments, then you'll be the least in the kingdom. I mean, a good example is the 10 Commandments. Now, I heard somebody quote the 10 Commandments from the Roman Catholic Church, and they left out a commandment, and the commandment that they left out was you couldn't bow to no images. They left that one out. But the number 4 commandment, they said, keep the Lord, Lord's day, and keep it holy. So, no. It says keep the Lord's day holy. Well, yeah. So keep but that's part of the 10. So I heard the 10 commandments from the Catholic Church because they had, in the pontiff and in the Catholic Church, they had a right, in their religion, they had a right to write religious law. So with Christ, when Christ says, if you break the least of these commandments, now you look at the 10, somebody might think, well, the least one is the Sabbath, Or they might say, I heard somebody say, well, just take any day as a Sabbath. Just make sure you take one day a week as your Sabbath. It could be Wednesday, it could be Thursday, Friday. Just take a day as your Sabbath. That's not what it says. It don't say that. But you have some people that will tell you that. Just take a day as a Sabbath. Take one day to rest. Don't work 7 days a week. Take one of those days to rest. Well, he didn't say that. He said on my day. So when you say the Lord's day or Lord's day or Yah's day, that's the Sabbath. Well, you got some people who believe it, they'll teach it. You have some that'll teach the other 9, but they might think that's the least one. That's probably one, that's kind of a ceremonial one. He said that they would be the least in the kingdom. He didn't say they weren't going to be in the kingdom. They'll put you the least. They ain't going to be able to teach nobody. You're not going to be able to teach nobody in the kingdom if you teach somebody to break a commandment. You ain't going to be a teacher. Now, it says that they'll be least in the kingdom. Now, I heard some people say, I heard this other guy, he knows a lot about history. He's really steeped in Hebrew history. And he knows, he could speak Hebrew, he could speak Koine Greek, he can speak some Latin, and he speaks English. So he's real. But he said that least in the kingdom, especially when you go, this was a part of it. Revelation, is it 20 or 21? Oh.
Somewhere that those who enslave you will be enslaved, so therefore they would be kind of the least in the kingdom, right? According to the hierarchy.
I'm trying to find this verse. Just a minute. Because he said this was the. Okay. Look at Revelations 22:14 and then 15. And he was bringing this out because in every kingdom, what we call hell, in the kingdom, it was called like one place, hell is called Sheol, which is the grave. The other one that they say, and we say hell for one thing, but in the Hebrew, you got Hades, Hades was outside of the kingdom or outside of the wall of the kingdom. And what was in Hades? Well, Hades is where you would put all of your, it was a place of where they would burn up a lot of the stuff that they found waste in the kingdom. And so they would put that outside of the kingdom and they would burn it up. And that was called Hades. And he was kind of breaking this, blessed are they that do his commandments. This is Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they might have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without dogs, sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. And he was trying to explain that this is the least of the kingdom. It's going to be on the outside. Yeah. The nation. Yeah, right. He referred to that nation, the Canaanites, as dogs. Yeah. And they were outside of they weren't a part of the kingdom. I'm not sure. I'm just going by what I heard, some teaching. So, and this guy was proliferate in, like I said, in Hebrew, in Koine Greek, because there's different kind of Greek languages, but he said the Koine Greek, Latin, and then English. And he probably spoke other languages too. But he says, in order to speak a language, you have to understand the culture that comes with it. If you want to understand and teach and read and speak that language. And so he was, the least of the kingdom was everything that was outside of the kingdom. That was the least. Sheol was the least of the kingdom. Hades was the least of the kingdom, where they put all of their, the dogs, sorcerer, whoremonger, everybody that had to get out, because in the Hebrew culture, if you committed certain sins, you had to get where? Out of the camp. And you remained out of the camp until you were clean, and then and you had to go through the evening. It always say they're unclean until the evening. So there was a period where you were outside of the kingdom. You'd have to get cleaned up and everything. Then you get back. You can come back in. So he was explaining that was kind of like the least that's in. Because once you get into the walls and get into the kingdom, it's all glory. It's all good. It's everything is, everything that's least is on the outside. But then if you say that, then it says, it talks about John the Baptist and how those who are least in the kingdom is greater than John the Baptist. So are you using the least in that same instant or not? Because then we're talking about a whole different,
Comparison to his work, like he baptized. So because he wasn't an apostle, the apostles did more work as a gathering, opposed to John the Baptist only baptizing, that he did the least amount of work, so therefore he would be the least in the kingdom based off of your work. Because you're going to be judged off of your work.
Yeah, but didn't Jesus say something about who's greater than John the Baptist? So it's good to understand the culture to get a better and Hebrew idioms to get a better or clearer understanding. Because if we're trying to understand it through English, we're not gonna get it. Because we use the same English word for a lot of things. Least, we just say least. We say hell, but they didn't say hell. They said Sheol, they use Hades, they use lake of fire. Those are different. All three of those are different. The pit, yeah. The bottomless pit, lake of fire, Hades, Sheol. Not Sheol. Sheol. Yeah, Sheol. But Sheol, Hades, lake of fire, pit, we say hell for all that. Well, in the Hebrew culture, you're dealing with three different things. Um, so when you say least, what are you saying in the kingdom? Are you talking about what is the least position in the kingdom? And then that's up to, study and interpretation, and then a peer, what are your peers saying? Um, a servant in the kingdom is least.
Didn't it say captivity captive? So those who put people in captivity will be in captivity. Therefore, they will be technically the least because they're the least and servants.
Yeah, I mean, and you have some people who won't even get into, But then what kingdom are we talking about? Like this here, the gates into the city. Are we talking about that? Because everybody doesn't have access into the city. Everybody doesn't have access into the city. There's going to be the earth. That new earth will be populated. It will be populated, but everybody can't get into that city. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then it's saying that it talks about entering into the kingdom, and then the outside of the kingdom walls is going to be the warmongers. I thought they got rid of.
There's from you have to see that there's still going to be procreation and the seed still growing.
Still going to have the ability to sin.
Yeah. Because what we're looking at our lives up into his return. Okay, so when he returns, is that when he's going to set up his kingdom? He is going to set up his kingdom to rule, but it's only for 1,000 years, and then I'm gonna wipe everything clean up. The devil has to go and his angels, and I'm gonna have a new heaven and a new earth, and then that's when we see the city come down onto that new heaven and new earth. The earth will be populated because he said in Isaiah 46, he said he made the earth to be inhabited.
I don't understand. If you're going to clean the world of sin, why would you put new sinners on it?
Well, what does he say?
To give them a chance? I don't know.
What does he say in Isaiah? It says in Isaiah, and it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yah, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against. This is Isaiah 66, 23 and 24. That have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be abhorring unto all flesh. So why would he have to give them the reminder? This is what happens if you transgress. Why would he give them that reminder if they could not transgress? So yeah, on that new heaven, new earth. I mean, it's like, this is what happened to those who transgress against me. And every Sabbath, I want you to come and look. Just in case you got an idea you want to transgress against me, just remember that this is what happened to those people who transgressed against me. So, yes. Yes. Right. 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 But why would he make another earth that'll probably be bigger than this for nothing? Well, then that means it's going to be inhabited. Well, he kind of explains it. But if the people are inhabited, where are they going to live? They're just going to sleep out on the ground? Well, they had water's coming out of the city. There's a river that flows out of the city, and you have the trees that are on either side, and those trees are for what? Healing of the nations. Yeah. He said it's for the healing of the nation. So it must be, it must be they can get sick. Why would you put trees there for, or vegetation or growth or some what's the echo name for a tree? What is that? What is it called? Is it arbor or so? Why would you put that up there that grows fruit and leaves and stuff for that particular purpose if nobody's going to get sick? What we're confusing is there's a city called heaven where us who are living now that's coming through the blood of Christ, we get to inherit that city. We get to inherit that kingdom. Yeah, it even says it. Blessed. Yeah, for us who are coming through Christ, we're going to be like him. He resurrected from the dead, never to die again. No. Yeah. No, they would be able to procreate. I don't know. Yeah, that's what Jesus said. Now, he's not done with this earth yet because Christ is going to come here and reign for 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I think we have in 70 AD. You had the abomination of desolation. That's I can be corrected. But I think we have seen that. Yes.
But isn't that also with the Antichrist coming? Abomination of desolation.
He is called the what is it? Son of perdition. The what else do they call him? Son of perdition. Yeah. He's the son of perdition. He has to be the man of sin has to be revealed. The man of sin has to be revealed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the son of perdition. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's what the reason why I say I think that happened already is because what they were doing in Jerusalem before 70 AD. And what the Romans was trying to do at the time of the desolation of Jerusalem. That's why now somebody can take me to some scripts and show me where it hasn't happened yet, but you can only do the abomination of desolation if the temple was there. Well, that was destroyed in 70 AD. There has not been a temple. They're trying to build, they want to build another one now, but okay. I'm skeptic, but huh? Yeah, that was. Yeah, he said destroy this temple in 3 days. I'm gonna build it back up again. They thought he was talking about you had Solomon's temple, but at that time it was Herod's temple, because Solomon was the first temple, and then you had the second temple, and so they thought, how this took all these years to build this temple, and you're gonna do it in 3 days? What are you talking about? He was talking about his body. Who's talking about a temple?
The building of the third temple, you mean? I think it's the temple within.
No, they were talking about how are you going to. Oh, the temple was there.
The only. Yeah. Yeah, it was there. Because they said John, out of all his disciples, John was the only one that died after 70 AD, after the temple was destroyed. So the other disciples died before the destruction of the temple. Because 70 AD destroyed the second temple. And you had some disciples that were alive at the time and some that had already died. Because we see in the book of Acts where he had already cut James asunder. Remember? I mean, and when he said it seemed like it pleased the people, he went to get Peter. He was going to try to do the same thing with Peter. So you had some disciples that died before 70 AD, and then the rest of them died by 70 AD, except for John. And he died till 90-something. He died after I think John died after the desolation of abomination. That's me, because you can't do a desolation of abomination if you don't have a temple. You can't do it. So the man of sin, the son of perdition, to be revealed. Some of them are already being opened, but it's going to be when the man of sin is revealed. Those days are kind of going to be shortened somewhat, because he says if he doesn't shorten those days, his elect's not going to make it. He's going to lose all his elect, because that man is going to be very powerful. He's going to come with great signs and wonders. He's going to deceive a lot of people. A lot of people are already deceived now. A lot of people in churches they're already deceived, so it ain't going to take much to deceive them. But that's the next thing is the man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition, and then our Messiah is going to come back and destroy him and destroy other nations and judge other nations. That judging of other nations, he's going to be setting up his kingdom. And when he does return, you'll have some who will make that resurrection. They're the ones, when he returns, those who make it in that resurrection, they're pretty much sealed, that because it even says the second death's not going to have no power, and we know what the second death is. So those who make that resurrection at his appearing when he comes back, those of us who are alive, and we see those who come back from the dead, the resurrection, we will know also who made it and who didn't. Because if you're not back in that first resurrection, then that means you got to stay in the ground until after the 1,000 years of peace on earth, and then he's going to judge all the dead. He says all the dead's got to give up. The sea's got to give up the souls. The ground has to give up the souls. Everybody's got to give up. And that's when you have the white throne judgment. But that's after the 1,000 years of peace. And then after the judgment, 1,000 years of peace, he casts Satan and all those who followed him into the lake of fire. This is going to melt with fervent heat. He's going to make a new heaven and a new earth. And then we see that city. So those of us who are alive when he returns and we get changed instantly into a body like him, we get changed instantly. We have eternal life. We'll be able to see his, and actually reign with him. Those who make the resurrection, those who were beheaded and they make that resurrection, they get to reign for 1,000 years. Those us who will reign as kings and priests with him, not only will we reign through that 1,000 years of peace, but then we have a new Jerusalem that's coming, where we have access into that city. Because the only ones who have access into that city are those who are blessed and keep his commandments. And then they have a right to the tree of life. That means you get eternal life. And you can go in and out of the gates of the city. You'll be able to go in and out of the city. But you can't get in. Everybody can't get in that city. There's going to be population on that new earth, but everybody can't get in that city. Now, I think he's going to have another covenant. I think this book was written for our covenant, but he's going to have another. Why can't he have another covenant. And out of all the, it never says in the book here where all the created angels came from. So how do we know he didn't have a previous covenant? We don't. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not talking about the new covenant that's spoken in here. What I'm saying is, once he's completed all of this, and there's a new heaven and new earth, and the city, and all that we know is written. Once that's done, who says he's not going to have another creation and start something else and have another covenant? I mean, he has eternity. He lives in eternity. So, and I don't see anywhere in our writings where he created it says that the sons of Elohim was there at his creation when he created the heaven and the earth. Yeah, and they applauded it says they watched it with joy, because he's telling Job, he says, where were you when I did all this? And when I created the heavens and the earth and the sons of Elohim rejoice, yeah, set the course and everything, he did. But it doesn't really tell us where the created angels came from. It doesn't really say that. Our beginning is with Adam. That's our beginning. Well, yeah, it's a realm we don't know yet, but we will know, when we get that eternal body, and we'll know. We'll know more things. There's a lot of things we'll know. But, where did all of those, when there was a war in heaven, where did all of those, a third of the heavenly hosts, where did they all come from? There's nothing mentioned in here of their creation, their beginning. They are created beings, but that's because, when it says he created all things and he created the devil, and then you had a third, the devil was the archangel, the serpent, the dragon, he was the archangel, he was over Michael. Well, all those so how many did he create? When did he create them? What's their law? Or, we don't know. We don't know. So once all of this is done, and there's that new heaven and a new earth and that city that comes down, and once all of that is done, who says he won't start something else? And then we would be, who says that the people that he's going to claim and give eternal life replaces all the angels that fell? He's got a number. He says at the fullness of he has a number, and maybe that number is to replace all of those that went with we're going with Christ, maybe, because we don't know. It says a third of the heavenly host. Well, how big is the heavenly host? We have no idea. We have no idea how big the heavenly host is. So if a third of the heavenly host lost out and he prepared a place for them, maybe he's redeeming a third to replace those. But he does it through Adam. He lost a third of the heavenly host, so he creates Adam, and through his seed, because all of us are Adam, but through his seed, then he's going to repopulate what he lost. He's an agriculturalist when you look at the earth and everything, and how the earth produces what he wants it to produce, and then what does he do? Even when you look at the wheats and the tares, take all of my wheat and put it into barns. This is my harvest, put it into barns, but then the tares, what happens to them? They get burned up. So maybe this is just me, maybe he's replacing what he lost. I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't have no scripture for it, but we don't know how large the heavenly host is, and we don't know. So if a third of them went with the dragon, how many is that? We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Why charge the earth? Oh. I yeah, yeah. Um, but I think he's going to make a new heaven and new earth because man has tampered with things on this earth. If you look at yeah, you look at our was our rivers meant to be like that? Were they, what about the pollution? Even if you go over, they said over like China, it's just so polluted. Now, maybe over time it could replenish itself. Um, they've been shooting stuff up in the sky. Um, they thought that they could shoot a missile through the moon. That wasn't too long. That's been in my lifetime. Shoot a missile through the moon. How could you? Why would you want to shoot a missile through the moon? I thought you landed on the moon. Why you want to do that? But it's called Operation. I think it's Operation Fishbowl. You can look it up. You can look it up. And yeah, and what they shot up in the skies and the damage that they're trying to do to the Shamaim. And I think he's just going to make a new one. I think he's going to make a new one.
The scripture says, as in the days of Noah. So as in the days of Noah, he didn't destroy the earth, but he flooded the earth. And the earth then took that water, and then it was earth again. Do you think that he would keep this earth, burn it, so he could start anew? You know how, like a farmer,
Yeah.
at the end of his crop,
Yeah.
burns all that waste
Uh-huh.
on his land, so that also creates minerals for the earth, and it
Mm-hmm.
cycles the dirt and all this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Do you think he would probably do like a
No, he could.
fire?
He could. It says in Peter that all the elements are going to melt with fervent heat. So I mean, it could be. It could be.
I don't know. I don't like to get into all that. I just try to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things that is not in the. Remember, Shaul said he went up to the third heaven. Said that he heard things that was not lawful for him to utter. So there's more than what we have. In fact, we had more than 66 books. Now we got 66. There's more than that. So anybody that rests on 66 books, this is all there is. No, there's not. There's not. Oh, it is. It is. It is. It's simple. He said a child's not going to err. He makes it that simple. Yes.
More details in those other books, and it's like sometimes it kind of makes you think like, your fleshly mind, we have a finite mind, like, does this really happen? Then you start to have that doubt, you start to doubt a little bit. But it's, when you come up with the third of the angels that went with Satan, and just the way he was explaining how, and I can't remember where I read that in that first, but it was like the way he was describing where he placed them and how one of the angels was talking to the other ones, and they were all trying to like agree together, like we're gonna all do this together. It's not gonna leave the soul meet.
Yeah.
Where I can paraphrase it, but it's just like.
I mean, there's communication with the angels. Michael and Gabriel communicated.
But I mean, just
when it says in Daniel, I mean.
Like the Bible that we have, the 66 books we have, they're not as detailed as those other books. Like those other books, for instance, the lady who tried to beguile Joseph and tried to get Joseph to sleep with her.
Yeah.
When you read in the Bible,
I think that's Yasser or Jasser.
I don't remember.
I think that's where it's at.
Joseph was able to, prove himself. But when you go to look at one of these other books, the book said that a baby started talking and he basically told on her. Said that's not what happened. And babies don't talk. Babies do babble.
Yeah.
And so that kind of makes it look like, wow. I mean, it was very detailed. The baby was like, this is what happened. Basically, like English, like their language. Yeah. But how we would understand. It was like.
Well, he spoke. He used a donkey. He spoke through a donkey, and Balaam was like, "Whoa, this donkey's talking to me." Yeah.
When they give credit to like Plato, what's some of the other names, Socrates and stuff, giving them that knowledge. Something you weren't even supposed to know, like the heavens and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So we credit all these Greek philosophers and people that came way before us with all this knowledge, but it wasn't their knowledge. It was because the angels
It's got to come from somewhere.
And they gave personal secrets away that they weren't supposed to be telling the humans here on earth. So it's just kind of neat, how the Bible, I don't say scratches the surface, but it doesn't go into give as many details as what happened with that.
They said that there's, for us to be as advanced as we are with telecommunications and how we send communications through these things and man didn't discover that on his own. That was, he was being educated by, superior or higher intelligence was given.
They have something like etched in stone, like they have computers and cell phones and things.
Yeah. Did you see this new discovery in Egypt? They dug up some the whole about 3,000 years old, and some of that pottery. Look at some of those pictures on that pottery and some of that stuff. You'd be surprised of the drawings on there, because one drawing that I seen on there looked really suspicious to what we call Area 54. Yeah. And this was like 3,000 years ago. It's like, wow, that looks kind of odd. I'm thinking that can't be, somebody must have drew that. They drew that 3,000 years ago. So just look at it if you get opportunity to go.
What's the name of it? What is it called?
It's their latest discovery over there in Egypt. Yeah. Yeah, it's the latest discovery. So, yes. Okay.
Daniel chapter 9 talks about that, sacrifice and a place in the sea before. And he shall confirm the holy covenant, from the covenant, and then for 1 week, all that. So you're saying that it already happened. Jesus told them, the disciples, when you see this happen.
Uh-huh.
So he's telling them, when you see this happen, but in Daniel chapter 10, it talks about it too, or 9. Streets shall be built again, the wall, shall be pilot, 70 shall Messiah come.
Uh-huh.
From himself, the people of friendship will come to destroy the city.
And the sanctuary, yeah. Right. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. So who was slain in the midst of the week? Mm-hmm. So that's Antiochus. Uh-huh. Now Antiochus, there was an Antiochus that predated Christ. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Antiochus, yeah. It was, yeah. I mean, Antiochus was a name that they gave people in that position. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Well, they had a morning sacrifice and an evening sacrifice that they would do daily. That was the daily sacrifice. Even in the time of the Mashiach, you had the daily sacrifice. But when he came, I don't know if they did continue to do the daily sacrifices. I don't know, maybe they did. Maybe at the time of the Mashiach, they were still doing the daily sacrifice. That'd be worth a study to see. But he was cut off in the midst of his week. The oblation sacrifice was cut off. And the sacrifice and the oblation that was cut off in the midst of the week is our Messiah. That was cut off. They seen, yeah, they seen the Messiah. They didn't really know it at the time, but then they understood just what just happened here. You know, sometimes things happen and you don't know what's happening and everything. After it happened, oh my goodness, okay, what just happened here? Let's go back over and see what happened. Oh, okay. This is because there's a lot of things in prophecy that he prophesied it, but unless he opens it up to you, people don't get it. You know, some people say they're still waiting for the abomination of desolation to happen, but there's no temple. So you can't have it with no temple. He's bringing, because there's people in Ethiopia that can trace that are descendants through King Solomon. So they can go back to King Solomon. So that would make them a part of Israel. And Solomon came out of Judah. So they want to bring not so much them, but down in South Africa, you've got the what do you call those, the down in South Africa, and they could trace their lineage back to Levi. No, not Igbo. What are they called? The Lima tribe. Anyway, they're down in South Africa, but they can trace they said they're of the Limbo. Is that what it is? Limbo, have you heard of Limbo tribe? Limba, I think it's Limba. But even a scholar from Israel, he's an Israeli, he did all the tracing, and they did yeah, that's who it is. They're descendants from, they did the DNA test, and they could go back to Levi. They're actually the priestly tribe. So what Netanyahu's trying to do is get some of those people up to Israel to build the temple, because the temple has to be built. Foreigners can't build the temple. You have to be of the bloodline. And so that's what he's trying to do, is get people from the Limba tribe to come up and assist to build the temple. How successful he is, I don't know. But he has been bringing back some of those Ethiopian Jews from Ethiopia back into, because you can look that up too, because just recently he brought back like 500 of them back into Israel. Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock into what they're trying to do over there now. I don't. Because they're political Israel. They're not real Israel. So, the prior temples, the two prior temples, were built by Israelites. So if they're talking about building a temple without Israelites, I mean, what's the validation of it? You can build, a lot of people can build stuff. I mean, you can build a lot of stuff, but yeah, that's right. They had to go back and get some priests and some Levites to teach them how to live in their land, because they were being eaten up by the lions. Yeah, that's 2 Kings 17. Yeah. So they took, all of Israel had to get out of the land, and they put other people in. That's when the Sephardic got, because you had, even in the time of Christ, you had people who were Sephardic Jews, and they said, "Hey, we're Jew, we're Sephardic." Yeah, you were placed in the land. You're not a descendant, but they were in the land. You got people now, the Sephardic Jews. You've got the Hasidic. You've got, you've got the Khazars, because the Sephardic Jews predate the Khazars, because the Khazarian kingdom didn't convert over until like 500 or 600 CE, where King Bulan, he converted the whole nation over to Judaism. So what you have over there now, you have some Khazars, you have some Carrots, you got Safari, you've got the Hasidic, you got all these different different ones, right? That's over there now. Now Benjamin Netanyahu's not Sephardic. I think he's Khazar. He's a Khazarian. That's how he got there. Yeah. So I mean, anybody can convert over to Judaism. Anybody can, and call yourself a Jew. Yeah. No. It's yeah. They're not the yeah. So, hey, Ezekiel, is there any questions out there? Ezekiel, any questions out there?
He said to his disciples, when you see the abomination of desolation, then know, stand in the holy place. This was like what spoke about the prophet.
Okay.
He said, stand in the holy place.
I know, because in the book of Maccabees, it said, and they drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for successor. Now in the 15th day of the month of Chesleu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judea on every side. And they burnt the incense at the door, in the houses, and in the streets. And when they had rent into pieces the books of the law which they found, were burnt them with fire. So this is talking about the setting up of the abomination of desolation. But this is when 70 AD, when we got put out of the land, that they did that, and they burnt all of the books of the law.
70 AD?
Mm.
I thought they were put out way before 70 AD.
Oh, you had the northern kingdom was dispersed, but at the time of our Messiah, you had Judea, which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and some Levites.
So what was that last part? What did it say again? The last part?
That they rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, and burnt them with fire. And whoever was found with any of the books of the Testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death. That's in Maccabees.
Because that's before you.
Yeah, that's before Christ. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, in the sense of, we said when you see the abomination of desolation, well, this is saying that the abomination of desolation here.
So what I'm saying is that if Jesus is talking about it, it's going to happen. It's going to be
happen again.
But
yeah.
it might be like he said, it might have been 70 AD, but also it might be 70 AD and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but he's saying because we don't have the temple right now, we don't have the abomination of desolation.
Yeah.
But then it sounds like the Messiah is going to be the one that's going to be slain in the street, and he was slain. And when you see that, so they saw it.
He was killed in the midst of the week. So if you look at a week, what's the middle part of the week? Wednesday, but what as far as a number, when you say 7 days, but then in the middle of it is 3.5. And his ministry was 3.5 years. So I mean I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I just think that it happened because of 70 AD and the temple was destroyed and everything. And he even warned them. He says, when you see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, you better get up. You better flee. He says, it's time to go. But when Vespasian started to surround the city with his armies, because you have to, when you want to read about or get a different You got Josephus that talks about it, but then you've got the chronicles of like Vespasian and his son Titus, who was, because I think Vespasian, I think he went on to become an emperor, I think, of Rome, and then you had his son Titus. But what they did to Jerusalem, some of it was prophesied in Ezekiel chapter 4 and chapter 5. It kind of talked about what was going to happen to Jerusalem and what Vespasian did to destroy Jerusalem and to kill you. Either if you didn't flee, you died in Jerusalem, or they carried you away captive. That was it. That was the only alternatives you had. You either had to get out of there, or you died in Jerusalem, or you were taken captive by the Romans. That was it. Jeremiah? I don't know. I'd have to. I don't know. Uh huh. Yeah. Um, I know Jeremiah. He tried to tell him that captivity is coming, and the other prophets and the other people said we don't want to hear that. You're talking about, yeah. So they put him to death. You know? Yeah. Right. Right. I don't know. As far as prophecy, I would say what to look for is the awakening of Israel. I think that's one of the things to look for. That it's the last days. He's going to gather when he starts to gather his people. He's going to do it. So when I was when I was when I was growing up, and maybe some of you guys can acknowledge this too. But when I was growing up, I was told that when Israel cries out to the Most High, that's when He's going to come. That's when they get together and say, um, "Yeah, Baruch haba Hashem Yahuwah." When Israel gets together and says that, that's when He's going to come. That's what I always taught. But we thought that political Israel was Israel. So everybody's looking at them, waiting for them to call on Him so that the Son would come. Jesus Christ would come. But when you look at them not being, the nation, then it's like, okay, well, if we want this thing to end, then real Israel needs to get together and call and cry out for Him to come. Baruch haba Hashem Yahuwah, just come. Yeah, the world is waiting. The world is waiting. But there's the devil, the enemy. They're trying to do everything they can to prevent that, because they know that if that happens, that's the end. They know that that's the end of this, what we're so comfortable with in life, our economy, just how we live and everything. We don't want to give up this comfort. They don't want to give up this comfort. So, yes.
I know I've noticed things that, and I mean, there was stuff already there, but I guess I just noticed it in the last few years that our eyes have started to open of who Israel really is and what He really expects from us. We were at the surface level, but there was stuff that we had to dig a little deeper. But I had never, ever, 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 ever before we started doing stuff to like you and then to, a few others. But I had never heard anything like literally nothing. Even though there were people out there who He had already started to open their eyes and reveal stuff to, I didn't know those people, never heard of those people, never heard any broadcast, anything. But now it's weird because now people are starting to be connected together throughout different parts of the world. Like I have a cousin, for example, I haven't seen my cousin, I don't know, she was like a child. And I never personally went up and said anything, to him when he was down south, there were people. But now his eyes have been open. And it Patty, Shirley's son. And I never said anything to him, and it was like, but a lot of the stuff that he's, putting on Facebook and saying and things that he's receiving as far as revelation are the same things that we're getting here. And him and I, we're not even having conversations like, I'll say something on Facebook and, if I see something he said that I agree with or like, and it's like, wow, where is he getting, his information from? And then like the Johnsons in Indianapolis. And then, people just throughout the world, and it's like,
my son has been woke.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy.
He is telling me things that same thing and he doesn't sit underneath him.
I know. That's crazy.
Because he's telling me some of the same things that we have been enlightened on. I'm like, wow. I know about the Jews and they're not even the real Jews and talking about this whole the shifting has shifted. And I am shocked.
Right.
We get into Bible.
Pastor Anthony Johnson that used to be here that's in Indianapolis.
Okay.
They came into right before we did, like that revelation, and then his wife, she told me, she said, well, this is when my revelation started to happen, and I was like, wow. And then another one that used to be with us, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about? The guy. I thought he was in Minnesota, but he did.
Kenneth Hill.
Kenneth Hill. He knows your people from Minnesota. Because when I first became friends with him on Facebook, he called me a reedite. And I was like, I'm not a reedite. I'm not lying. That's what he called me. And he basically asked me, like, where do you want to be my friend on Facebook? And I'm like, okay, no one's really ever asked me that question. I don't, didn't know how to respond. But because he said the way I talk on Facebook sounded like something Bishop Reed would say. And he used to be under Bishop Reed. So he recognized it. And I'm like, no, I'm not a reedite. I can speak for my, self. That's how I came off. His eyes were open. And so he started sharing. I would go home and tell him stuff like, he's saying some of the same stuff that you're saying. It's kind of just weird. So now I'm connected with people that, I never met or B, knew them, but now that revelation happened to them. And it's not because everybody was getting together, like you said, with your son, and having these meetings and stuff, and teaching the exact same thing. The exact same thing. And Tamika, like, has people, and, like, they'll say something, and it's like, oh, my goodness, they're teaching the exact same thing. Never met these people, but, and that's how I look at it as a revelation.
Because they're going to be on one accord at one time.
They're all teaching the same thing.
Yeah.
But,
So I'm gonna end this broadcast, and we're still gonna be here. We're gonna sit around and talk, but I know there's a lot of people because sometimes they can't really hear. They can hear me because of my microphone, but they can't really hear. They kind of strange. So we're gonna end it for those who are online, since there's no other questions, and we welcome you to come back again and join us in this live stream, in this ministry. Spirit is leading you, the Ruach is leading you, then please join us. With that, I say Shabbat Shalom.